We often get things for freeze drying at this store. It's a restaurant supply store called Chef's Store. Today we were looking for some frozen vegetables, fruits, and maybe some cubed potatoes. I was looking for things that were pretty much prepped and ready to put on the freeze dryer trays, and these fit the bill perfectly. They're not as good as fresh peaches, but they are good and they're available, and peaches aren't right now. So we got 10 pounds of the frozen ones. Okay, so getting ready for batch number 3. It's April 28th, 4:20 in the afternoon. The freeze dryer's dry enough. And take the defrost fan out of the door. My little piece of board out of there. And then before I start this, one of the things I like to do occasionally, well, not occasionally, in between batches. So in between batches, one of the things that I do when I'm not taking the racks out and doing a complete clean out, which will be in just a couple more batches. I like to do that every few batches. But I can use this little grabber goodie and grab either some of the disinfectant wipes, or this is just a paper towel. So make sure just wipe out and along the sides just to make sure anything that might be stuck on there is out. Okay, so then if there's any stuff in there, I can kind of clean it out, and just kind of a light cleaning between main cleanings. So thermometer back underneath. Next, we'll check the water from the last batch. So there's the water from the mixed vegetables, and you can see it's just a little less than 1 gallon. So, oh yeah, pretty much a full gallon. Okay, so that was from the mixed vegetables. Power meter is on and ready and reset. The oil is starting to get cloudy. Yeah, you can see it's a little bit cloudy there. And this one's more cloudy. So I'm going to be changing out the oil and filters probably during this batch or between this batch and the next batch. Doing very full batches, the water gets built up faster and saturates the filters quicker, and I have to do it more often. If I'm doing light batches, I can do 20 batches before I need to replace the filters. So let's see what else we got. So carefully cleaning that, the inside edge. You know, use a slightly damp paper towel. That's funny. That tap tap is the chicken at the window. Okay, so next I'm going to pre-chill it and get it ready for the strawberries. And customize. Oh, I want to check the cycle times because I need to correct that one. I forgot that I'd set the final dry to 11 hours when I was doing some sugary things like pineapples. So that's why it was going so long before it kicked over or till it said it was finished. So I'm going to put that back down. And I need to set it to permanent, and I'll have to remember how to do that. Okay, so I went over and closed the drain valve too. And it looks like we got a pretty good seal already around there. So now give that just a few minutes to cool, and then get the strawberries on the tray and get them in the freeze dryer. So it's been just over 42 minutes since I started the freeze dryer for pre-freezing. It says it's down to 17 degrees, so it's plenty cold to put the food in, so I'm going to get it started. Next on the list is fruit, and doing 10 pounds of peaches. They're a frozen cubed peach. They're already frozen in a bag. Just dump them on the tray. They're ready to go. Okay, so using some pieces of corrugated plastic to help insulate the trays from the table. And the trays have been in the freezer while I waited for the freeze dryer to cool down. And I'll just get one bag out at a time so that they don't thaw. So these are Flavor Pack brand. They're peach cubes. They're pre-frozen and ready to use. So tray number one. Yep. And this is the same parchment paper that was on the last batch with the vegetables. For things that aren't sticky or gooey or anything, I usually use the parchment paper more than once. So now our target is 1889 for this tray. Like all the batches in this series, I'm trying to load each tray with 2.5 pounds of food. I don't want that piece of ice in there. So obviously if I find a piece of ice in there, I'm not going to put that in the freeze dryer. $18.89. I'm just kind of pressing down on them to try to make the tray level and to kind of push them down a little bit so they don't fall off the tray when I move them around. All right, so tray one. And on to tray two. All right, that's a teeny bit short. So 1853. Yeah, 1884. So next, we'll get the thermometers in there and get them in the freeze dryer. So I'm gonna try to get them about 1/3 from the bottom. And if this works out for the peaches, because we've done fresh peaches and I absolutely loved them. The frozen ones seem to shrink a little bit, or shrink quite a bit. Okay, the freeze dryer has now been pre-freezing for an hour and it's down to -4, and there's a pretty good seal ring on it, so I'm not going to release or open the drain valve. I'm just going to pop it open. And tray number one. And the thermometers in the fruit say it's about 22 degrees, 23 degrees, which is actually starting to thaw with peaches because of the sugars. So the freezing point is lower. Okay, it looks like we got a good seal around the edge. So those have been pre-freezing for an hour. It's plenty cold, and so it won't thaw out at all anymore. It'll start refreezing. We'll come back and check it before I go to bed, and if it's cold enough, we'll start it. Otherwise, we'll adjust it accordingly. Let it freeze for about 6.5 hours. It's well below 40 below, It's more than 40 below. So now I'm going to go ahead and start it, and it's getting late, so but I wanted to give it a good long freeze time because peaches are kind of sugary, and it seems like the sugary things need more freeze time. So I'll start this and then turn on the fan at the vacuum pump. And I could just let it go and it'll start by itself, but this gets it started a half hour earlier. Okay. And I'll probably change the oil tomorrow while it's running. So if I do, I'll show that too. This is where I'm giving the vacuum pump a little shake to help get any water droplets to come down the hose and into the filters. At this point, it had been running for 29 hours. That includes all the freeze time and everything. And it's got about 7.5 hours to go, which means it would be done about 5 a.m. But I won't be checking it at 5 a.m. All right, so it's been 42 hours. However, I'd made a note before I went to bed that that's when it was going to finish, was 3640. And now, well, of course, it's a few hours later. And now before I rewarm it, I'm going to go ahead and weigh them so that I don't have to rewarm it, put it in there, and then check it again. It's probably done. It looked like it was good, the temperatures were. So I'm going to go ahead and get them out and check them. So I'll open the drain valve. And for this, I am going to wear gloves because they're very, very cold. So even just touching them for a few seconds is uncomfortable. All right. And yeah, it's cold in there. All right, here we go. Tray number 1. 917. 916. And wow, the peaches really shrunk up a bit. That's interesting. When I do fresh sliced peaches, I did not have that issue, but I've seen that each time we've done the bagged peaches. 908. Okay, so we've got the weights right now. Now I'm going to start it again, and we'll check it again in a couple hours. It should be done. And I might do it in less than 2 hours if the thermometers show that they're fully up to temperature. So, more dry time. And, oh, yep. Drain valve checked. And continue. And you can see where it pulled in air right here, where it wasn't sealed for those first few seconds. So it's the circumstances like this that I wonder when people say, how long did that batch take? Should I include the fact that it finished at 3 a.m. but now it's 10 a.m. and I still haven't finished it? It really doesn't take that much, but it took me that much because I didn't get around to it. And sometimes I don't know when it stopped. These last couple of times I was there to see the fact that it was on final countdown, and I knew when it was going to finish, so I could note that on a little post-it note and put it there. But I don't always know that. So sometimes I get up and finally go check it and it's done. I don't know when it finished. I suppose I could download the data and look to find out when it was, but I don't do that. Not since the first couple of batches when it was like new and go, gosh, I want to see every second of the detail information. Anyway, so it's back in there. It'll be rewarming, and then we'll take it out and bag it. I'm going to bag it in 1 pound bags again. It's had plenty of time to rewarm, so now I'll take it out and reweigh it and make sure that it's stopped dropping weight. And I'm taking it out while it is still warm, so that I don't have to worry about condensation on it or anything. Drain valve open. All right. So tray 1. Two or three, almost 3. Yeah, actually I'm going to give it a little bit more time to make sure. So I'm not comfortable with a couple of those measurements. So that was 1 hour and 3/4. 2 trays dropped by 1 gram and 2 trays dropped by 2 to 2.5 grams. I'm not real comfortable with that amount, because the net weight is going to be about 150 grams. So 1.5 grams would still be 1% water. I'm going to give it another, maybe an hour and check it again. If it doesn't drop down anymore, because that probably was enough, and especially since it had been sitting overnight, or well, 7 hours without it running, it could have gained a little bit of moisture right out of the barrel area. So I'll come back in about an hour and check it one more time. All right, it's been about another hour, a little bit more. And so now, this time I'm sure it's dry. I will shut off the machine, turn it all off, and take it out. Okay, and I'm gonna do, gosh, that's so much quieter. I like it. Okay, open the drain valve. Tray 1. Tray 2. So now we'll move them over and we'll get the weights without the thermometers and be able to calculate the net weight. So it says 45 hours, but it actually would have finished during the night, and it was 36 hours. Or 36:40, so that's more like the reality. All right, so got the thermometer underneath. It's stuck in the ice, but it pulls right out, and it was still -20 right there. And I'll put it up there, that way the water can drain underneath. See the rivet here? So I drilled out these rivets so I can move this tray up when I want to videotape things, or when I want to video things on this shelf. That gives me a little bit more room. It raises it up about 1 inch and gives me enough room to get in there. That's kind of totally meaningless as far as the freeze drying, but it's kind of a fun little interesting piece. So here's the power usage. So 28.03 kilowatt hours. And it's still using 3.5 watts because it's the display's on the freeze dryer still. All right, so the trays with the thermometers in, I'll go ahead and take the thermometers out. Now I'll be able to weigh those and find out what the total net weight is. So starting at tray 1, 904. 895, 890, and 900. Here's the numbers on that batch. So these were frozen peach cubes. It was 10 pounds. They were $25.18 for the 10 pounds. The net weight before was 4,540 grams, so just barely over 10 pounds. And afterwards, now it's 595 grams. That's a lot of water. I'll have to watch that when it drains. So that, with peaches, that absolutely maxes it out. Okay, one of the other things about peaches that I've found interesting, so these seem like they collapse a little bit as they dry. When we've done fresh peaches and sliced them, they didn't. So I don't know if it's about something to do with the processing, or maybe these have more sugars, less sugars, more ripe. I don't know. Anyway, they're still delicious and they're great for putting in your cereal or something. All right, so let's get these bagged. I need 59.5 grams in each bag. All right. Yeah, see, they kind of collapse a little bit. For peaches, I would say that this is a little bit overloading the freeze dryer. It'd probably be better to stop with 8 pounds of peaches instead of 10. All right, so, and they do stick a little bit to the edges, but not bad, and that's why I have the parchment under there. Oh, they're just wonderful. I'll go with the other scale. So I wiped down the table with disinfectant wipes after the last batch to get ready for spilling things off the tray, because that happens. Oh, so I still need another 10. At least these aren't, these don't roll like the peas do. Bag size is a personal choice. It's like, you know, depends on what you're going to use it for. So if you're going to, if you know you're going to use it for snacks later, then bag it in snack size. If you know you're going to use it for pie later, then figure out how much you need to make that pie so that you bag it in the right amount to start with. Sugary things like fruit will draw, well, everything will, but sugary things especially seem to draw moisture out of the air very quickly. You know, so I don't want to bag stuff or open a bag and leave half of it out and not use it right away. So that's why I'd prefer to have a small bag than a large bag. When we started freeze drying, we used a much bigger bag. Hold on. So that's the size bag we were using at first. And so this is the size now. Considerably different. So this is the quart bag, and this is, I don't know, a gallon bag. I definitely like these better for what we do. Now for other people, it probably wouldn't make sense to use the small bag. If you're going to have to use, open 2 or 3 bags every time, then it'd probably be better to use a little bit bigger bag. For us, that's not a problem. I would rather have to open 2 bags occasionally than have a leftover amount every single time. Send in more questions so I could answer questions while I'm bagging. I should have a little display here with questions, and then I could talk about them. Because bagging, there's not much to talk about. So each one of them is a pound of peaches. All right, so next I'm going to add all the oxygen absorbers to the bags and then close them up. So I'm using 300 cc oxygen absorbers. Yeehaw! After putting the oxygen absorbers in each bag, I'll kind of push out any extra air and then zipper them shut before sealing them. Sometimes I use a straw to suck out as much air as I can. Some people even use a vacuum chamber to really vacuum them down. Okay, so kind of smooth the top of the bag down, make sure there's no wrinkles or folds. And the first bag each time, I like to do it twice to get everything warmed up because all the mass underneath is cold. And so I want to make sure, yeah, because that thing's cold when you start out. So I like to do it twice to make sure that it's sealed. And I've got it set to 6.5 or 7. So looking for that seal. Okay, so that's the seal that it makes. And you can see it really melts that inner layer together beautifully. So that's a piece of the bag. So this bag had a crease in it, so there was no way I was going to use it in case there was an issue. But it's good to use for testing. So I'll just take a piece of that and cut the seal part away. So now I have 2 separate pieces and put them on top of each other and put it in there. Okay, lights off, letting it cool for a couple of seconds. And there's the seal it makes. Back to sealing the bags. So try to make sure each one of them is, and if you have this same sealer, do you have this same thing right here where there's a hot spot right here? Because mine has every time this used to be at this end, but I flipped it around. But I find that interesting. I try to seal as high as I can up on top this bag. That way, if it has a fail, I've got room for 2 more tries before it gets to the zipper. So I meant to get this defrosting before I started the bagging, but I forgot because I wanted to get those bagged right away. Fruits are always kind of one that I'm worried about because of the sugars. They want the water back in, they'll pull it out of the air. So, okay, so now I'll get this defrosting. And so I use this cheap fan, and I should replace it because this one has bad bearings and it sounds terrible. And I have this baffle in there to help direct the air to the top half. It blows through and then comes back around. So I'm going to put the peaches into the bin. I'm using bin 1 again. I have it on my sheet, so I can put that right up over here and cover up this one. So I have bin number 1, the month and year, that's how we sort them, and then the number of bags, and then this will be updated onto the computer later. All right, so these are the mixed vegetables from a couple days ago. And the dates that I use, I don't know if I ever mentioned that. The dates that I use is the dates that I put things into the freeze dryer, not the day that I take it out or bag it. It's the day that I start the process with freeze drying. So these were started on the 26th. Today is the 30th. And these peaches were started on the 28th. And you can see the oxygen absorbers have done their job of absorbing oxygen. Okay. And then the chicken is from 424. Okay, so I'll just add the peaches to the bin. And I mentioned before, if we're using it as just a pantry, a day-to-day thing, then it might make more sense to have a bin of fruit, a bin of vegetables, a bin of meat. And that's kind of how we started. But as we'd end up with some bins that only have a few bags in it. So it made more sense to combine things and then just track where they are with just a simple inventory system. Not the barcode scanning system I wanted. All right, so I think that's it until we start the eggs in a few hours. Well, technically we already started the eggs because started processing them last night to get them in the freezer to pre-freeze and get them ready. Come on, chickens.